at WLFE-DB.com for upcoming shows and so much more.
Hey everyone, it's Tuesday night again. You know what that means, don't you? It's time to join Mike and Kristie for another episode of Where's My Sage? A show hosted by a psychic medium and a guy on a quest to find Bigfoot. Who would have thought? Together, they will take you on all sorts of adventures, and not with lots of different people. Kristie even gives readings. It's time to sit back, get up and get ready. You can't sample the universe sitting down. Your hosts are waiting. Come on, let's go!
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Where's My Sage? I'm Mike, and I'm here with my wonderful co-host, Kristie in London. And how are you this evening, Kristie? And there's one. So
you can't count until I actually do it, and I didn't say anything before I didn't unmute myself. So, You're the king of that anyway. Hi, everyone. How are you tonight? Michael, how are you?
I'm here. I apologize for everybody and to our guests tonight for not being here last week.
You're quite an adventure.
I get myself all tuned around. I got sick. I cut my eye open. I'm
going to wrap you in some bubble wrap. So, that's going to be about it.
Yeah. So, bless the eye doctor. They got me in, got me healed back up, and back moving around again. So
awesome. You know, just in time to do the next thing.
Yeah. If I can break something, I'm breaking things, you know.
Oh God, please don't say that. We have so much coming up to do here.
So
that's right.
I am definitely in trouble this evening.
Yeah, you are. Look at this lineup so far.
John and Paul and Greg. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna get beat up pretty much.
It's Konkoleski.
Yeah. And
I win 5 stars.
Yep, I can't pronounce anything. So and then Wendy's in. So yeah, it's been a crazy couple of weeks. You know,
you ready for Christmas?
Yeah. I think I'm ready to rock and roll.
Are you?
Yeah.
You're actually off this year.
Yeah, I actually first time in like 10 years, you know, that I've actually been off on Christmas, but you know, working crazy hours for New Year's, but that's part of the job. So it's keeping the mind off of things, and we're keeping around. I've been chit chatting with some folks about the things. We got the pink hair UV project going, and Doug said the hair is supposed to be out this week, so we'll see what happens from that.
We'll see.
And we'll pass it off to the crazy scientist to take a look at as well. So
I love that crazy scientist.
Yes. So, but it's just been crazy. Kind of stepped away a little bit from the Bigfoot stuff. So, so what else you got going on your end? Why we get a couple more folks in here?
Getting ready for the holidays, and I did have the opportunity, though. It was pretty cool. I was invited to actually be a part of. I actually gave bubble wrap as a gift to my oldest daughter back when she was in high school, because she was always getting hurt and having sports injuries. So that's actually a thing. And, I actually had the opportunity to go back to a location that I'm now familiar with and be a part of a documentary that another group is making on this. I have filmed there with the other group that I was working with. You and I have done some things there. And it was kind of cool because the interview did not go as smoothly as we would have liked, but Spirit had other plans, which was always fun. And so it'll make for a very interesting segment in the show. I can't wait. So as it gets a little closer, and you good? Oh, one. That is called karma, my friend.
Yeah. I heard some clicking in the background. I was trying to figure out where it was coming from. So I didn't know if it was my headphones or not. I got everything set up over here to do a presentation for work tomorrow. So my gears spread out on the table. So I'm probably getting
we need to focus because we have a really cool guest today.
Yes, we do.
We heard him speak.
Go ahead.
we heard him speak in Michigan, and we were both very impressed. And to hear his story, it's not like any others that I have heard. How about you?
No. I mean, it's always, it's the subject matter that we're going to remember tonight is something I've kind of, I wouldn't say avoided, but the UFO thing, we've got a little bit. We actually have a UFO meet up here in town. Actually, my neighbor across the street runs it at the local community center.
Right.
It's just kind of ironic that our neighborhood is so into the paranormal, and Mary Grace runs that, and she usually gets in and watches us. So she's been
and
pushing
you're right
us
smack in the middle of all of it. Isn't it great?
Oh yeah, the Bigfoot's on the street, so it's always crazy. So
well, and the thing that really is, I mean, from start to finish, I found that he was very interesting, and I learned a lot because I have actually had students of my own in my own area who, one that's only a few minutes away from me, who has also had experiences, and when they come to me, as a medium for help on that level, it gets really tricky for me, and so that's when I have to be able to say, I don't know enough about this. We can go this far, but other than that, I really don't know. It's not paranormal. It's not spirit. It's not whatever. Can be a little unnerving when you're not familiar with it. But then again, I learned. So, to hear him speak so eloquently of his experiences and just of his life in general is very fascinating. So, why don't we bring him on? Because we're going to, guys, he has a story to tell, and we're going to let him tell it. And along the way, if you have questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. And every so often, we will definitely address your questions and ask your questions. But we're going to let him tell. We're just going to let him share his story. And I think you're going to find it pretty amazing. So please
like, share, and subscribe.
Oh, yes. Sorry.
And let me bring Bill up here while you finish the introduction. There we go. How you doing?
Yes. And Mr. Bill Konkoleski, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me on the show. And shout out, of course, to our mutual friend, Reverend Tim Shaw, who very subtly suggested I should be on your show.
So the whole dragging me up to your table thing was, you call that subtle? I was like, I know. No, Tim's a wonderful person. Thank you, Tim. Mwah, mwah, mwah. He usually pops on at some point because his show's right before ours. So at some point he usually says hello. But it's really nice to have you. Thank you for joining us. Yeah.
Oh, sure.
So first of all, I have to clear something up. Am I saying your name correctly? Am I pronouncing it correctly?
Perfectly. And the funny thing is that whenever I hear my last name pronounced correctly, I'm like, oh, it's like surprises me. I'm like, that person knows me. Yeah.
Awesome. I feel like we go way back. It's all good.
4 months.
Yeah. Excellent.
So,
go ahead, Michael. I know you want to say something.
I just got to follow up with something. Tim T just found out the notifications aren't coming through on that email, so I will get back to you. So I'm sorry, I had a quick processing. No, I listen to you speak was awesome. So yeah, and Tim does that, grabbing people. Pretty, it's an interesting way of things. So I'm sure he'll be here soon. So right.
Amazing. So you refer to yourself, and as I learned, this is actually a term, but I had never heard it myself before. And you refer to yourself as an experiencer, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
That was fascinating to me because in all my years hearing all different things about it, I've never heard anyone use that term before. So
are you familiar with abductee? Is that what you are more commonly hearing or have thought the term to be?
Probably, yes. But I connected more with experiencer, probably because of what I do and the things that I experience regularly. I could really relate to that. It makes it more personal, Yeah,
it's the common term for somebody having the contact experience, be it extraterrestrial, interdimensional. I mean, really, a spoiler, don't really know where they're from. So the contactee term was really big, say the 50s and the 60s. But the term got kind of spoiled by people that were, for the most part, seemed to be just making stuff up. And there were people coming forward with their accounts, but it was the waters got polluted by people just coming in and saying outlandish things. And soon there was a lot of fatigue around that term. And then after that, abductee started to roll in and take over as a term, especially when you had a lot of accounts coming out like Betty and Barney Hill. They were taken. Travis Walton was taken, Pascagoula and Allagash, and all of these different accounts. These people were taken. Unfortunate things happened to them. And then you have the big splash of the 80s of like Bud Hopkins and David Jacobs putting out their books. And, the term abductee really seemed to fit the narrative of what was going on. But after a while of shaking out information about these types of encounters, some people don't have negative encounters. Some people don't feel as though they are taken. And people who tend to have this phenomena happen to them are also generally frequent flyers. They're people that have this happen to them again and again. It's not just sort of a one-off, get taken, and then that's the last that you have happen to you. It's a type of thing that goes on through your entire life. And so people have positive and negative experiences sometimes with the same set of entities. People who have maybe even a majority of negative experiences say that, it was kind of a rough ride, yet I wouldn't change anything. I would still have this type of experience. I would have, I am feel blessed that all this crazy stuff happened to me, even though it wasn't necessarily all positive. And so that is part of the shift away from abductee to the experiencer title. But also, it is a broad spectrum type of phenomena. People who have this type of phenomena often have other type of phenomena happen to them. And poltergeist things, psychic things, crazy synchronicities, just a lot of things come into the picture if you have this one type of phenomena. So experiencer is sort of a, I guess, an encounter neutral term, an experience neutral term. I mean, you go through all these different experiences, and that's what makes you an experiencer.
That's really interesting. Especially that you brought up all the paranormal and the psychic, abilities and things like that as well. I wouldn't have put not that I wouldn't have put two and two together or thought of them in some way, because for me, there are many different planes and I definitely believe that. And, there are all different things happening, and I do believe we can all share and jump through and move along through. So to me, that makes sense that this is just another piece to that whole puzzle. I mean, maybe I'm not articulating that, as well as I want, but I can appreciate the whole idea of what this is made up of, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
You, Michael, you look kind of perplexed up there.
I'm trying to do some sound editing on the other side. Yesterday I'd heard another podcast. They were talking about a new scientific study with MRIs of experiencers. And I don't know if you had seen that, Bill, or heard about that, about the took 100 different servicemen and women that had experiences, and they look at the MRIs and their basal ganglia, the control center there in the brain. It almost looks like a tumor, but they found that everything was kind of hardwired, like with extra jumper cables kind of thing. I guess it'd be not being a neuroscientist or anything like that. So just as you say, experiencer, it's just kind of listen to that. It's kind of interesting to, if you've noticed that,
I don't want to just throw a name out and be completely wrong, but I believe the gentleman's Gary Nolan. And I think the tip of the research is just sort of leaking out now, but leaking out's not an appropriate term because he's sharing openly. But the weird thing that he claims is that, okay, so people that have this type of specific brain, tend to be the people who see UFOs and have contact experiences. And the strange thing is that he was able to get MRIs from people before they had their experiences, and to show that these people already had these type of brains before they had their first encounter. So, because it was like, which is causing which? Are these types of experiences causing people's brains to go unusual, or is it, the brain first, and then it leads to these type of encounters? I've never had an MRI, and so, I don't know what my brain looks like, but I don't think it's necessarily caused me to experience things that aren't authentically happening. And if it means that some of the psychic stuff, if you have that special kind of brain, happens to you more frequently, I don't know, maybe.
Yeah, I've had multiple, so I'm actually going to go back and see if I can find those scans, because I'm not an experiencer myself, but doing this field, it's like, hey, can I get the one up on somebody,
Ooh.
But
I'd be very curious to know what yours look like.
And it, and I'm not taking it as a joking matter at all, because you folks are like you said, experiencing something, and most of my friends have had experiences. So coming to the community and letting folks know that you had your experience. How did you come out to let folks know that you had that encounter, that experience?
Okay, so my very first memory in life, age 2, is of a little gray guy coming into my room. I mean, my very first memory in life. It's not something that came back to me several years later, like, I think I remember this weird thing that happened to me when I was little. No, it burned in my memory the moment it happened. Little gray guy comes into my room, stares down over the crib at me. I'm freaking out, yelling for my parents. My mom is in the other room telling me to go back to sleep. And the little guy just leaves the room. And then I had experiences at 4, 7, 9, and into my teen years, etc. And so this was a recurring thing that it had been happening in my life. So it turns out that the phenomena runs on my mother's side of the family. And I have 4 older brothers, the 2 of which we could go toe to toe in a crazy story competition. And then the next 2 brothers after them, 0 between them, not a thing. And then me again with all the weird, crazy experiences. And so it was in the house. The phenomena was there. They would talk about it, but my oldest brother's 11 years older than me, and then the next oldest brother's 10 years older than me. And so they were told not to talk about it around me, not to scare me, not to put ideas in my head, and they didn't. It wasn't until I was in my early teens that they started to talk about it freely around me. So once I found out that I wasn't alone in the strange things that were happening to me, I would tell my family and they'd be sympathetic, but they wouldn't share themselves. They're like, they were very supportive and didn't openly doubt me or ridicule me. But when I, was able to talk to them more freely about it, I was going into my early teens, and I had a supportive family to come out a little bit to. And then from after that, I would tell friends a thing or two, see how they responded. And, always in my life, at all points, I had a support system sympathetic to what I've been going through. So I've been very blessed about that. Very open everywhere, at my work, my family, my friends. There isn't anywhere there where I keep it. And very, very few people seem to take issue with it. Most people are curious.
Now, you say you family connections and stuff like that. We interviewed Andrea Perrin a couple weeks ago, and she mentioned something about different factors, blood factors and stuff like that, and seems to bring her closer to having that ability to make contact or being singled out or something like that. In your research, and is a MUFON investigator and everything like that. Do you tend to hear that a lot from the community or folks?
You hear it a lot, and I forget the percentage of Rh negative blood type connection to the experience or phenomena that's claimed. It's a very small boost. There definitely is a majority of negative blood types associated with the phenomena, but to me, it's not necessarily substantial. I myself have an A positive blood type. So, it might be my brain that's weird, but my blood is normal. I guess.
Okay.
I can totally relate to that.
But so yeah, there may be something to it. Sure, I would say it's a higher percentage than you would get randomly, automatically, but still, it's not an overwhelming percentage.
Okay. I was just wondering when you're saying having family connections, if you guys noticed anything, that way that makes you a special candidate for, the gift of interaction, or do you see it as a gift or a negative or a positive? I guess that's the question, that you had that ability to make contact. So,
I'll answer the question this way. A while back, a friend of mine, Sandy Nichols, who's also an experiencer, he asked me, he's like, do you ever wish that none of this had ever happened to you? And I said, I wouldn't recognize myself. My entire life, my earliest memory from, being in the crib till now has been embedded with this phenomena. And so I just really, the best way to look at it from my point of view is that it's a part of life. I wouldn't know myself apart from this phenomena. I could sort of get a general picture of who I'd be, but I'm not sure what I would think of the UFO phenomena in general, had it not been for UFOs taking an interest in me before I took an interest in them.
Very interesting. So going back to, when you were afraid and you were alone in your room and you were calling from your mother and she didn't come. I know for myself, growing up and not really having a network of people until I actually came out myself and said, this is who I am, this is what I can do, and this is where I'm going to go with it. It wasn't until then that everyone in my family kind of came out and told me about their gifts and everything. And my attitude was, my reaction was, where have you all been? We were so close. So it's not like these people didn't see me my whole life and see the signs, right? Not putting blame, but it's almost like when you have that network and you have those people who know, like my mother though was not in touch. So when I would be afraid at night and I wouldn't know what to do and I would have to explain what was going on and hope she understood, she didn't know how to help me. Did your mother ever offer any advice or help, or do you think she knew, what was going on and why you were calling for help in the first place?
I don't necessarily get a strong feeling that she knew exactly what was happening at that moment. When I say it runs on my mother's side of the family, my mother, to my memory, only has one experience of a being in her room. But the side of her family, like my cousins, there are a lot of experiences in that direction and that sort of thing. So she's known about it, but I would say, she was sympathetic, possibly in part because of all the stories my older brothers would tell, and just simply that she knew that we were surrounded by some sort of phenomena, the whole family, seemingly.
Right. So you got the validation you were needing to the best of her ability. That was the same with my mother. She didn't know really what to say or how to say it, but she definitely knew I was not making it up. And I definitely was not lying about it. So, but she didn't know how to help. And as a parent, we all know that's very frustrating when you can't find a resolution or help, your child fix or change or make it better. So that's good. Thank you for that. Michael, do you have a question?
I always have questions.
I can see the wheels in your head turning.
Always.
Smoke's coming out of your ears a whole bit.
Yeah, just was taking care of a troll over on YouTube. So from Matt from Central Florida Bigfoot, our buddy down there, what happened on the other visits with Bill?
Okay, so I have 2 whole books of stuff. I have many experiences from childhood and also my early 20s. I tended to taper off for a while. But pretty much a wide variety. And I will get into some of the specifics, I guess, of some of these cases. But just to get back to, because I made a plug for myself for my books. So I did hypnotic regression in 1993, 93, and 94. I joined the Mutual UFO Network in 93. And the state director for Michigan at the time, Shirley Coyne, she was a hypnotherapist, and I was blessed to have a half a dozen different regression sessions with her to help re-examine some of the things that had happened to me through my life. And she was obviously hugely supportive. And so I took really great notes. I'm like, okay, now I'm going to write down all this stuff that has happened to me in my life. I'd make this personal journal to always go back to. And then at one point, I'm like, oh my goodness, I have a book. I could be one of those people, with a book. And when I put all the material together, I noticed that half of the material fit really well in one category up to age 20. And the other half that I wanted to put down at the time from 21 to 25 fit really well on its own. So I split it into 2 books. And that first book, Raised in Two Worlds, is about growing up having this type of phenomena happen to you. I'd seen a lot of books out there like, this is what kids go through when they have this type of experience. I'm like, well, this is what it's like as a kid growing up with that type of experience. And as I just rattled off a bunch of ages a moment ago, 4 was my next experience. It was 2 p.m. and I was home with my mother. My dad was at work. My brothers were at school. And I decided that I was going to take a nap. So I went into the bedroom and I laid down on the bed. And right when I hit the bed, my body had this very powerful vibration feeling in it. And it seemed to focus into my chest. And then I felt like somebody pulled me out of my body, like sort of pulling a handkerchief out. And then there I was in this room with 3 little gray guys. And they were treating me like, a playmate, a friend, and we were going to have a lot of fun together. And I was out of body. They took me out of body. And I know it's kind of a big step to go from even saying that this is a physical phenomenon and trying to prove that to going to saying, oh, there's this sort of astral part to it, if you will, and who's going to be able to prove that? But, I'm just telling you what happened. So the gray guys took me out in the hallway. And they wanted to see if I could float down the stairway. So they said, lay down face first. And since I didn't really have a body, it was just this weird sensation where my perception got closer to the ground. And they said, okay, float down the stairs. And so I did. I effortlessly, easily, I went into the TV room below it and I landed in this falling leaf pattern and this motion back and forth. And then I felt like I was standing. And the beings were really happy, like, wow, this is great. You did it. You were able to function outside of your body with control. You were able to control yourself. This is wonderful. And so then I'm like, oh, this is, I got to tell my mom. This is fantastic. And her like, oh, no, don't tell anybody. No, don't tell anyone. And then suddenly I felt a powerful vibration and I was back in bed. So I ran out and I'm looking for the little gray guys. And I couldn't find them anywhere in the house. I'm like, okay, so they left. So maybe I could do that floating down the stairs thing by myself. So I lived in a tri-level, went back up to the top of the stairs, laid down face first, and I crawled down the stairs face first. And it was not the same. It was a different experience. And so then I didn't tell anybody for years about that. But yeah, that was definitely, another thing that had happened to me. At age 7 was a big physical encounter for me. I was in bed. It was late at night. And this black circle opened directly above my head. And out of it was this metal sort of hose-like thing that started whipping around. It seemed like it was generating electricity, shooting sparks. It was terrifying. And then I felt as though I was lifted up, sort of sucked up towards it, and found myself, in a term I like to use, is on board. Whether I was on a flying saucer, or if I was just in some circular building, I was in some sort of disc-shaped space. And I went, there were little guys that met me at the door, ushered me into another room, and there was a bed in the room. And I assumed, like, oh, it looks like I probably am going to have to climb up on this bed. But they didn't seem to be paying attention to me. In fact, they left the room. And I'm like, oh, they left me alone? What am I going to do? I'm some little kid, right? So I'm like, okay, so they went that way. I'm going to go this way. So I exited another door, went around this sort of big sloping hallway until I found myself at a dead end. And I looked back and I saw the little gray guys were just following me, kind of amused, like, oh, let's see where this little, boy goes. And so I came back. They ushered me into a side room and sat me in a chair that was very much like a dentist chair. It was metallic and there weren't any restraints that I could see, but when I sat in it, I felt like magnetically attached to it. And then this slightly taller gray, the grays that had ushered me in were about 3 feet tall. This gray was about 5 feet tall, and comes up to me and says, be really good and you'll get to see the color blue. And the difference between the 3 and the 5 was really not much more than a height difference. They all had these giant black eyes and were just sort of this putty gray color and whatever. So anyway, so I'm laying there and I feel this sharp pain on my arm, like somebody just sliced open my arm. And I look down and I see like that my arm is in fact cut. And then as I'm looking at it, right when I'm watching it, it's healing over. And then I look back to the gray guy that was seemingly the doctor in this scenario, and kind of like a what the heck type. I was like upset, right? So I look at him and his eyes changed from black to this very bright cerulean blue. And it was tranquilizing, mesmerizing, hypnotizing, this gaze he had on me. He's right in my face with these giant eyes. And then I felt like I was swirling in this sort of blue cloud space, whatever. And then I woke up the next day after that. And I looked right away. And sure enough, I had a scar. I still have the scar on my arm. And a little postscript to the story is in the afternoon that day, I was playing in the backyard with the 6-year-old boy from across the street. We were climbing trees in the backyard when this mist rolled into the backyard. I thought at first it was smoke, but it was kind of like smoke machine, fog, just very light and misty. And this was summer. And this cloud comes rolling into the backyard. And in the middle of this cloud was a little gray guy. And he comes up to me and asks me telepathically, he says, are you all right? And I said, yes, I'm fine. And he seemed really satisfied, like, oh, good. And then he walked into the neighbor's backyard and this mist followed around him. The mist pretty much took up most of the backyard. It was a very big cloud. And he walked in the backyard and this mist was right all around him. And then he walked off until I couldn't see him anymore. And the friend who I was playing with, I'm still in touch with him. He completely remembers this mist because that was memorable enough, this weird cloud coming through the backyard. He never saw the little gray guy in it, but he did see the mist. And so then through my, going on from that point, I had a lot of rougher experiences with the beings. And that's where I wrap up in that first book, is that sort of first 20 years of getting to adulthood through having these type of encounters. And my second book, Two Worlds Collide, is Experiencer to Two Worlds Collide, is about this weird experience I had the first 5 years of my 20s, where all these strange things seem to sort of be this giant tapestry of them taking a very deep personal interest in my life. And that's one of the things that I felt when I am like, okay, I could just put out a second book, but a real strong point I wanted to make is a lot of people, when you're starting to talk about your life as an experiencer, you don't talk about all the psychic stuff that happens, the little odd things that happen. Like just yesterday, for example, I'm in the bathroom and this bright flash of light went off in the towel cupboard for no reason. There's no light in the towel cupboard, but you know, the little things like that, people just want the hardcore alien stuff. And so it's tough to say these things happen to an experiencer. Sometimes these very dramatic things happen, but it's invasive in your life. It's your whole life. You live your life seemingly as a string. You could connect the dots from one unusual thing to another and have all these epiphanies, like this strange thing that just happened to me, you know, 2 weeks ago. Oh my gosh, that was connected to this other thing that happened a month ago and then a year ago. And then you suddenly are putting this giant jigsaw puzzle together. And I think that's a part that's often difficult to tell, because it's, you know, you can't tell that in 5 minutes, those types of stories in 5 minutes. Those are big, sprawling stories. But when you lay them out, that's a big part of this phenomena. It isn't just them jumping in your room or your car one night and yanking you out. They take a very deep personal interest in lives of people here for whatever reason. And so I wanted to sort of show an example of that when I put out the second book. And, you know, the books are where books are. You could get it from Amazon or Walmart, Barnes and Noble. And yeah.
I'm going to drop one of those links for Amazon in right now for your first one there.
I have a quick question. What's that?
Thanks for letting me plug the books.
Oh, of course. That's what. Yeah. Do it again. That's it. That's what we're here for.
Yeah. We want to make sure, you know, we've got that out there, because, you know, we got to listen to your story, and I'm going to let Kristie ask her question there. And I mean, it is so fascinating, and, you know,
it does not faze me, or I can't even find the words. Like, I can relate to so much of what you're saying. And when you talk about these certain experiences, I just have different words to describe them, or whatever the case is, not to minimize your experience, because, but how similar they are, you know what I mean? And it's just fascinating to me. So I'm curious about the little gray beings that you talk about. Can you elaborate and tell us more about them? Do they seem more tangible, well, you know, living, breathing, or do they seem more like spiritual, or, you know, could you tell us more about those?
Okay. And I can explain them from my experience, but I can't explain why they're the way they are. So there are three types of beings in my personal encounters that seem like they work together. 3 foot tall gray variety, a 5 foot tall, and then a 7 foot tall mantis being that seems to be in charge. It's almost like saying the 3 foot ones are the blue collar workers, the 5 foot one, the white collar workers, and the mantises are upper management, to use that sort of analogy. But the little gray guys don't seem to have much initiative or thought or creative spark. They seem almost drone-like, almost puppet-like. They don't seem to have much going inside. Anytime that I've tried to engage them in conversation, they only express what they're doing at the moment. To say, where are we going? Their response is, yes, we're going. You know, and, you know, who are you? Yes, we are. You know, it's just this very strange sort of way of speaking and responding that seems to be that they are focused in that very strict, tight moment. And they're not thinking ahead. They know what to do, but they don't seem to be used to expressing the past or the future, just very, very much in the now. The 5 foot tall ones seem to be more alive. You can carry on a conversation with them. They're a bit coy and subversive, and they either withhold information or they twist information, or they're willing to let you make up your own story about what's going on, and they'll just agree with it.
Really?
So you can't get anything out of the little guys because there's really nothing going on, you know, upstairs. And you can't get much with the 5 foot tall because I don't think they use facts the way we do. They've got their agenda, and it's like, well, whatever we can tell you that you'll believe, or whatever you think is going on, we'll just go along with that so long as you do what we want you to. So I've pretty much given up on finding meaning from that particular group. And I don't put any stock into it. I don't, when I write and I talk about it, I don't say this is their mission, this is their purpose, this is what's going on. There are some things that are evident. Their actions speak louder than words. I'll say that. But when you want to actually get something from them, it's really tough. And then the mantis beings are pretty menacing. Their energy is very tight and compressed and powerful. And to even be in their presence is kind of terrifying. I don't know that the beings that I've been with intended to be as scary as they come across, but it's a 7-foot praying mantis. That's pretty scary, and they have a very strong psychic energy to them, and that's pretty scary and it's daunting. So while the one time I saw a mantis was pretty much intentionally to scare me, I don't know that. I think it's just a difference between our energy level and their energy level, and just how strong energetically they are. The one time that I was brought before a mantis was in my teen years, where the Greys were having difficulty getting me to do what they wanted. And, you're a teenager already, kind of a little rebel, and they wouldn't tell me what's going on. They wouldn't tell me what's going on. And I was just physically able enough to put up just the slightest bit of resistance. And I was clever enough to, to get around what they wanted to do. And so, yeah, they were pretty upset. And so they brought me in front of this mantis being that said, stop resisting, just do what we want you to, and you'll reap the benefits of it at the end, and you'll understand why we're doing what we're doing. Just cut it out, just go along with the program. And while I was pretty scared, I don't really think that slowed me down in my attitudes toward them. It wasn't until right about the time I was getting out of high school that I thought maybe there was an option of trying to find some sort of middle ground with them, to form some sort of relationship with them where it wasn't as terrifying for me, or they didn't have to be as aggressive. And I have to say it worked. Like, one example that I have, and this is a very edited version of the story. One time they were in my backyard, and I said, I don't want you to come in the house. If you're here, can you just call me on the phone? And it's 4 a.m. and the phone rang. Nobody was there.
Really?
And I stepped outside, and there was this UFO above the house. Actually, it was like a cloud, a disc-shaped cloud, perfectly disc-shaped cloud, but it had that sort of wispiness of a cloud. And it was a bit self-luminescent. And then it flew up and shot away at a really crazy speed. But the experience that I knew up until that point was that if I sense them around, that means at one point within minutes, probably, I'm going to be sedated. I'm going to be immobilized. Something's going to take me, and, against my will. But, that one example of probably several I have is them listening to me. And I'm thinking, well, where do we go from here? And yeah, I still don't know what their big picture is, their long game.
Wow.
So do you, with these experiences where you're seeing some sort of craft and things like that, do you generally, being an investigator now, do you look for any police reports or news articles, or even talk to the neighbors? Hey, did you see anything weird or strange, at the time that you're experiencing? And I guess a follow-up is, has anybody gone looking for you at those times that you've had your experiences and not been able to locate you?
Okay, so there's two questions in there. I'll answer the second one. Where have I been gone for any length of time where anybody couldn't find me that might have been looking for me? No, I don't have any of those types of experiences. I've had missing time, but I haven't had it in a way where I was missing from somebody else's concern. The first part of it, when you talk about, say, like media reports, police reports, stories from neighbors or friends and things like that, certainly I do come across several of those, and they seem to be more and more prevalent these days. But as a MUFON investigator, really the way that we work is that people report their sightings directly to us. Like, for example, they will go to MUFON.com, fill out the report form, and then a MUFON investigator will get back with that individual. And the reason that I say that that's my focus is because in Michigan alone, we get about 200 sightings a year. And so that's enough to keep your hands full. You don't need to look out for other material to look into and investigate, even though if there's a really good one, certainly you're going to pursue it. But the tremendous volume of what MUFON investigates is what comes into us. Wow. And there's, like I said, there's so much of it that it keeps our hands full. And it's not to say that 200 reports in a year means 200 unknown events in a year. We can identify probably about 95% of whatever comes into us. There's people still report Venus as a UFO. People see aircraft and report it as a UFO. Now you have these added candidates of drones being more exotic than they've ever been. Chinese lanterns or sky lanterns, people report as UFOs. And then now Elon Musk was, I guess, MUFON's Man of the Year for 2020 for his Starlink satellite.
Yeah, I actually got a panicked phone call from a gentleman going, "Am I losing it? What's going on?" And he was a big, what we'll call my buddy there. He busted my chops about Bigfoot quite a bit. Then he had a small paranormal experience. Then he's driving home and he happened it. We had a perfect night in the area, and you could see him. He's like, "They're lined up. What's going on?" And it was like, okay, didn't know anything about him. Got onto the research, and I'm like, oh. No, I guess my question would, like, when you say you see the mist and stuff like that, do you look to, NOAA or something like that and see if there's any, atmospheric anomaly?
Sure. Yeah.
Just say, okay, on this night, on this day, in this area. I mean, it's a big thing I do with the Bigfoot stuff, and comparing those that data set.
So. Oh, sure. Yeah, there's tons of apps, like all the weather, besides the weather, the star maps, the air traffic apps that are out there. There's all sorts of great little tools that you can use. And I'm it seems unusual that I shift gears there from saying, here's all this crazy stuff that happened to me, and then let's talk about other people. They see things and they don't know what they're talking about. No, I mean, certainly a percentage of really quality reporting, comes into us from credible people of things that we can't explain. And of course, that's the exciting stuff that we latch onto. But, as we're the last people that want to be duped by somebody's poor identification or even a hoax or anything like that. So sure, we provide a charitable service by helping people identify things that they see and they don't understand. So that happens. And what also happens is people see and encounter really strange things as well. And, we look into those also.
No, I really appreciate it. I mean, that's what really I think helps validate folks sometimes, is that when folks are, like yourself, are looking for that extra data, that confirmation. I saw something and I can't explain what I saw. Can you help me identify that? And then when you can't, it gives you somebody. And did you seem to find somebody to help you when you were going through these things to do that kind of validation, or what I'm looking for here, just an ear, somebody to bounce ideas off of and really get that flow through to help you look at the big picture?
So yeah, there's been several people I look to as mentors in my life. I can interpret your question one of two ways. People that are in the community that help me with the experiencer part of the phenomena, or people that are in the community that help me um, look at the UFO phenomena as an investigator with the proper set of tools and the right perspectives. Because there have been mentors certainly in my life for both. I always looked at the first name that always pops in my head is a gentleman by the name of Dan Wright, who was big in MUFON for many years. He recently released a book called the CIA UFO Papers, and he was a phenomenal investigator for MUFON, and he was very compassionate with the experiencer community, and his passion for the subject and the ability to be himself was one of the things that impressed me. Because when I was coming in 93 in my 20s, I'm like, how should I act within this community? Who should I be? And Dan was like just fantastic at what he did, and his message was really always just, as he was evident, to be yourself. And so I really took a lot from that. And the line of state directors before me in Michigan, Dan actually being one of them, but other people, that I could name drop: Harry Wilness, the Coins, George and Shirley, Bill Murphy, fantastic, Rich McVannell. Just, I've been very blessed to have great mentors around me, no lack of mentors. And so I've always felt comfortable asking them questions, and they always gave great answers. And so, the whole thing is I'm, standing on the shoulders of giants, if you will.
Oh,
That's cool. Why Michigan? Why is Michigan such, the folks we talked to, we heard you speak, and a couple other folks. Why does Michigan seem like it's kind of there?
Spot.
I mean, I mean, there's
Yeah.
so much strange. I mean, to the point of the early cultures and all the copper mining and stuff like that. Do you see any crazy connection there? And I don't mean crazy in the sense crazy, but just why
unexplained?
Yeah. So my brain's not functioning so great tonight. So.
Well, there are definitely some other states that get a lot of high activity. Texas, Pennsylvania, California, Florida. A lot of states you could point to that have high activity within the U.S. I don't know quite what to say about Michigan that makes it the state it is, but the 1966 sighting wave here, is historic. Not just saying that it's historic in the sense of a UFO phenomena. It's just pretty much straight up historic. There were tons of people that had sightings, primarily in March of '66, and the government and military took interest in it. The Air Force sent out J. Allen Hynek on behalf of Project Blue Book to look into the phenomena, and he declared that maybe what people were seeing was swamp gas. So that's where the term comes from, swamp gas. If you ever heard, UFOs, nothing but swamp gas, it's from that event. The way that the police handled it, very open. The way that the media handled it, very supportive in many cases. They were feeding the fire, not putting water on it, which you would tend to see in the ensuing decades. And Gerald Ford was a congressman at the time of that big sighting wave in '66. And when J. Allen Hynek, when he said that it was possibly swamp gas, something that he regretted instantly, and tried to walk back during his, especially in the later career when he's formed the Center for UFO Studies. At that time, it was problematic that he said it, and all of these people started writing to their congressman at that time, which in many cases, for wherever he lived in the state, was Gerald Ford. And Gerald Ford was saying, okay, I hear you. And he put forth this letter to the Armed Services Committee, and said, yeah, you guys should look into this UFO phenomena. And they did. They actually had a hearing on it. I mean, I could really go on and on about that 66 wave, but in 94, there was a big event, March 8th, 1994, hundreds of witnesses. Wurtsmith Air Force Base in 1975 had a UFO descend over the base. They had nuclear weapons on the base, and it was part of actually a series of incursions over nuclear bases by UFOs in a 2-week period. There were 4 different bases in the U.S. that had nuclear weapons that had a UFO appear at close range in a 2-week period. And of course, the big Kinross event, 1953, where a jet fighter collided with a UFO over Lake Superior, and the plane and the UFO disappeared forever at that moment. So those are some of the big points. So yeah, Michigan does have a lot of high profile things happen. And for whatever reason, we get more reports than a lot of our neighboring Midwest states that also have activity as well, for whatever reason.
Quick question, another question there for follow up on the Grays there from earlier. Have they ever told you where they're from?
No. I mean, there's this saying from Paulo Harris. I've said it too, but she's really known for saying it. And the term is all of the above. Do I think they're from another planet? Do I think they're from another dimension? Do I think that they're time travelers? Et cetera, et cetera. And and when she's asked that, she says all of the above. Like there is, you could do a lot of research in this field and try to make a specific case, really get into double down with confirmation bias and say they're time travelers. I'm not saying time travelers, but time travelers, and you can make a great case for it. And you can't really knock down some of these arguments that are really exotic about their origin. The beings I've come into contact with personally, I really don't know where they're from. I have absolutely no idea. And it may not even be important to them themselves, because people have a complicated view of where they're from here in the United States. I could tell you that I'm, German and Polish and Lithuanian and Belgian, all true. Or I could say I'm American or, what have you. And so I think that they've probably been spacefaring for so long, or dimension tripping, or whatever they're doing. To an extent where they probably don't have a real localized sense of identity, and their point of origin is unknown to me, and I don't even know if maybe they know where they're ultimately from. I'm not sure.
Awesome.
I have a question before we take a quick break. When you say, going back to what you were talking about a little while ago, when you say you can feel or sense when they're around, can you elaborate on that?
Sure. I would say the steps that it goes through is sort of this uneasiness, this sort of anxiousness, this sort of tension that really doesn't have a specific source to it. And then the air feels different, more tingly, electrified. It's more like even in a warmer month, it feels like almost like you're in a winter room where you could touch something and get an electric shock from it. That sort of staticky charge to the air. And then sometimes either like a pressure, like you feel like things are compressing, or you feel a little swimmy, a little disoriented, and with a feeling of presence. Like not only are things weird and I'm feeling a little bit off, but it feels like I'm not alone. You could sort of sense their presence around you.
That's wow. And I just can't get over how much I can relate to all of what you're saying. It just makes me even more curious to learn more about this aspect of things and this part of things. Because to me, all of these different experiences, Bigfoot, spirits, UFOs, all of it, I feel like they're all intertwined in some way. and they just all overlap. And so it just, the fact that I can relate so much to that, actually probably more so than anything else that I am aware of or educated on to this day. So it's really very interesting that, because it's just everything you're saying, I can relate to all the different experiences that I have and the way that I work and do what I do. So it's really amazing. That's great. Thank you.
Yes.
All right, Michael.
Well, it's a perfect quick break. It's the 9:00 hour, so we're gonna take our quick break.
Yes.
So grab you something soft to drink and whatever. I'm gonna roll a little quick commercial there. But our friend Chris, former guest there from Squat Survival Gear, is actually doing a quick giveaway right now over on his Instagram. If you guys want to go over there, he's got this Mothman backpack that's sweet. It's like top on my list for
that. Mike is like fangirling over to.
So it's perfect size for gear. So go over, check out Chris's thing. He's going to be on for about 30 seconds. He's giving away, and then come right back and join us. So we're going to take a quick break. So run to the bathroom, grab something.
And then we'll take those questions that are in the chat too.
Yes. So be right back. So where's my commercial there? There we go. Yeah, my fingers aren't working.
WLFE-DB.com, where you can find vodcast shows, podcasts, and more, like Where's My Sage, Inside the Drag Closet, Across the Pond, Paratalk Radio, Just Cindy, and more. So go check out WLFE-DB.com, where talk radio is a whole lot better. Our shows are your shows, and that there makes for a great talk radio.
Hey guys and dolls, this is Casey DeVille, the better half of DeVille Inc., Baltimore, Maryland. If you're ever in Baltimore, stop in and see me and Tony. Invisible Bree, 5920 Eastern Avenue, Baltimore, Maryland, 21224. Give us a call if you're in the area at 410-400-9641, or look us up on the web at DeVilleInc.com. DeVille Inc., where we specialize in you.
Ted Van Son Jr. is a seasoned investigator and well-versed in the ways of paranormal investigation. He is now ready to share his ideas and unique approach with all of you. Flashlight, recorder, and comfortable shoes. Hit the ground running as you follow this easy step-by-step guide to a fun and thorough paranormal investigation, perfect for first-time and lightly seasoned investigators. Think outside the paranormal box. Learn all about the technology and techniques used back in the early days of paranormal investigation. You can find these valuable resources online at Goodreads, Barnes & Noble, Walmart, and Amazon. Get yours today.
Hi, I'm Jenna Grover. In the world of fashion, we get lost in the cost. Everyone wants that special piece of quality jewelry, but they can't afford it. Not on my watch. I sell handmade quality jewelry for a fraction of the price, and that includes jewelry made of sea glass, natural stone, crystal beads, glass beads, Bigfoot jewelry, and more. If you don't see what you want, email me, because I make custom jewelry too. Check out my website at gbythesea.com. Also, you can email me at jewelry@gbythesea.com.
You're listening to WLFE DB Radio. Now, back to our program.
Chris just made my day. He's coming out with a sling bag after the new year. I'm a big Bill. I'm a big gear guy. So we usually do a tactical Tuesday, and Chris is he's a veteran, so we're trying to support him. And for some reason, Instagram kind of bopped out. So, but he's got some awesome packs. So now, talking to some folks that I know have had experiences, they say they always come up with or find little pieces of something, metals, fragments. Have you ever noticed anything like that? Or when you're interviewing folks, unexplained, medical particles or something like that after their experience?
Yeah, I know many people with what they believe to be implants. And I've had the ability to actually feel implants on people. And that's always a trip. The thing about removing them, I guess there's a few different directions to go in. One is what are they? And Dr. Roger Lear, who had worked on these for a long time, he would go to try to remove these things from people and investigate them. And one of the challenges was that these things would try to elude the surgeon when they tried to be removed. Or sometimes if somebody was going to have surgery to remove it, it would disappear the day before the surgery. And in those cases of a successful removal, the strange thing seemed to be that it wasn't the actual piece of metal that was in the person that was significant. It was the biological material that around it that was clinging to it, and it was just using that as an anchor inside the person's body.
Really?
What the purpose of these were, a lot of people say, oh, tracking device, possibly, but I don't know. I think that we as humans are more effective at tracking other people than this sort of clumsy lump of something that they would stick into people. It just seems like it probably must have some other purpose than just simply tracking, because it's kind of ham-handed in some ways. When you could go and like pinch somebody and you actually feel it under their skin, you're like, they didn't do a very good job of hiding this. And it's expensive to look into these things. If you're going to go to a doctor and say, I've got this thing, that's a medical expense, and if it's there under the skin, it's probably not an emergency, and insurance could be problematic. I had a friend who had one in the back of his skull, and it showed up on an x-ray, and he'd always said, oh, when I die, I want this removed. Because I have it's in a dangerous place, so they can't take it out. And he died, and besides the fact that it would have been expensive to take out, and he passed, unfortunately, and it was never removed. So yeah, these are elusive little things that happen with people. I've not had one to my knowledge. Some of the things that go along with experiencers that are sort of in the same lane I've experienced, like strange bloody noses. And it's strange when you and several other people, all have a bloody nose strangely at the same time. Weird things like that. But in respect to an actual implant, I don't think I've ever had one, though like I said, I've been able to actually feel other people's on them.
You would think if they were going to use it for a tracking device, they would pretty much be in the same spot. It almost makes me wonder if they're tracking people in different ways for different reasons, and that's why they're putting them in different places, so they can't be removed. So they want to track something specific for data, specific to that person versus another person, and it's interesting.
Yeah, an implant up the nose is probably the most commonly reported.
Really?
And pretty gross, but implants behind people's eyes are a thing. Like they actually pop out the eye and stick it in and pop the eye back in. Ooh. I know somebody that had that happen to them. And putting it in random places could be to measure specific things in specific parts of the body, or maybe they're just like, well, if we always put it in the same place, they always know to look for it, so let's put this one in this guy's armpit.
Very simple. It could be very true, right?
I've talked to two folks that I know pretty decent. One says he got something in his ankle, and the other one was like an upper arm or something like that was, and again, one was removed. It was like a thin piece of wire or something like that. But and the other kid, I just found out about 7:00 this morning, so it's kind of interesting. The interactions that you folks have, boy, it's like I'm shot. I've been shot all day, so I apologize, folks. Migraine today. So let me retrace back. So do you keep a journal like your books are what's catching me here. So, I see, you've got the Weird Michigan, you have your 2 published books. Do you keep a journal, like a daily journal of, hey, this happened today? So you can go back like a week or a month or 6 months later and say, hey, we can connect the dots to kind of go back to those areas. And I just had another great thought. So the other follow-up would be, are you drawn to looking at certain parts of the sky? Before I completely forget that one.
Now, are you talking about, for the first part of the question at least, are you talking about events that happen to others or myself?
Your personal stuff, like your own personal timeline of what Kristie talks about when she does her work with her students and stuff like that, to keep a journal of what you see, your experiences, your dreams, that kind of thing. But do you say, man, that was kind of a strange thing, we're going to put that in the logbook, and see if something comes up like that again somewhere?
Yeah, to some extent, certainly. And you find, like, if you have a running conversation with another experiencer where you share what happens to you, then you just go back to that communication, say, when did that happen? Oh, yeah. And that's a great way, because you get the feedback, and then you also have it recorded at that specific moment. But otherwise, yeah, I do, keep track of these things that happen, big and small. As to part of the sky in particular, I don't know, probably not. But I will say that the strange things that I've seen out my window have been directly west of me. A couple of the things I've seen over the past year or so is recently I saw a gold sphere of light do this sort of perfect, almost like horseshoe shape in the sky and then vanish. And it was really beautiful. The glow on it was so even, and the motion was so perfect. It was really a treat to watch this weird light in the sky. And then last year I saw this strange, also glowing sort of T-shaped thing in the sky, and out pretty much in the same exact part of the sky. In both cases, saw those for less than 5 seconds. And those are the types of things, you just see on a regular basis, and you're like, oh, there's another weird thing, And one that happened, I can't remember if it was a year ago or 2 years ago now, actually, this one, there was this bright white flash that erupted out of my backyard, almost like my entire backyard was a spotlight, and shot straight up in the sky for a moment and then shut off. Nothing was back there. Have no idea what caused it. But yeah, a lot of unusual light phenomena for sure. And I can go back to when that was. I just don't remember when it was offhand, but I could look it up.
2 follow-ups on that. We had Doug Hychek on, the Monster Quest guy. We're doing some stuff with him. Yeah. But talking with him, he said he had an experience similar. He kind of had some weird lights and stuff like that, and then had like all the low voltage stuff in his house and around his house go down. Yep. Have you noticed when you've had your experiences, any electrical or, equipment kind of fizzle out, fry out kind of thing?
I have this weird sort of inverse of the effect. I certainly know individuals that really mess up electricity, in some cases during an emotional peak that can trigger it. For myself, the unusual thing that I have, which is sort of the inverse, is I tend to bond with electronic equipment, so that when somebody else uses my electronic equipment, they in fact break it. So I'm very greedy with my electronic stuff, because for some reason the energy I have with whatever gadgets I have doesn't tend to work well with other people trying to hop on a laptop or my phone or anything like that. And so, and I can always tell because my brother was coming over occasionally to use my home computer for a while, and I could always tell when he came in. He wouldn't always announce that he was over, but and you'd look at the computer and it looks normal, but something isn't working, and I'm like, it's Steve. Did you use my computer? And I'm like, he'd admit it. So.
That's funny because I can relate to that too with electronics and technology, and a lot of intuitives and a lot of mediums can. It's almost like we burn them out. I swear I have 2 laptops in my closet that I got years ago that I can't get rid of because they're almost brand new. One was only 6 months old when it was just like, sorry, we're done. And it's awful. Just cell phones and, just anything, even sensors for things don't always work, and it's a pain.
Yeah. Actually, a couple stories real quick before we get back to other stuff. One is my brother, my oldest brother. He was working as for the city of Warren, and he had this one job where he had to drive around and see if not traffic lights, but like street lights were working. And this one particular supercharged night, he was driving around and all the lights he would drive under would shut off. And he'd drive a little bit and they'd come back on. And so it was funny. He said they picked him to go out for this job. Whenever he would go near a light, he would shut it off. But an unfortunate one I had when I was doing a talk at a library once, this woman came up at the end of the talk and said that she was in a rad tech program, but in college, but whenever she kept shorting out the machines. And she said she knew it was herself doing this, but her classmates hadn't caught on yet. But she was like, what am I supposed to do? This is my profession. I'm shorting out this equipment that I'm supposed to use. And luckily they haven't found out it's me yet, but she said she knew it was her. And I believe her. But so
absolutely.
Yeah.
I grew up it's called Grand Island. It's a suburb between Buffalo and Niagara Falls, New York. Mm-hmm. And you can only get on and off by going on bridges. And as a kid, I remember every time we would pass, not every single one, but every time at night we would go over the bridge, probably from especially the age between, I'm going to say 5 and 8. At least 2 or 3 would go off as we passed through them or passed by them going over these bridges. It was crazy. Yeah. Wow. All right. So I think we have a couple of questions, right? Before we move forward. I don't want to forget anybody.
Yeah. Brian has got a question. Any thoughts on time slips?
Now, I've heard that term used in different ways. And does that mean sort of time becoming imbalanced? I'm guessing it doesn't mean missing time unless it does, because I've experienced all sorts of different time anomalies of one form or another.
I would almost, Brian, if you're out there, can you clarify exactly what you're looking for? But I would have thought the same thing, Bill, that he was talking about losing time. But what else have you experienced? Maybe you'll actually talk about what he's looking for.
Okay. Well, I'll explain this story, and it's a weird one in so many ways. And I think it's indicative of if you are actually going to come forward and tell these type of accounts, how they happen, then this is this type of stuff that you actually get. Not the watered down, edited versions that people like to explain and have it be easy and sensible. I'll just come out and say it as it is. Back in 95, I had started to date this woman. And when you are an experiencer, you have to tell this person that you're wanting to form a relationship at some point, that this is part of your life. For one thing, they might think you're crazy. They might be uncomfortable with the phenomena. They also might, at one point, and very likely, be with you when something happens to you. And so in this particular case, we'd only been dating about 2 months. I hadn't told her yet, this girl that I was dating. And we went out on a sort of a nature hike trail thing. And we were there and we're like, for most of the day, and the sun started to go down. We're like, oh, let's watch the sunset. And so we did. And then it's like, oh, let's stargaze, which we did. And we were up on this hill, so we had slightly better visibility. And while we were up there, it was spring. It was the frogs were doing their noises out around us, and the different little sort of sounds you get out in the woods. And suddenly it was completely quiet, absolutely silent. And I'm like, well, that's strange. And then we heard these. Well, I heard these footsteps coming up the hill. It'll all make sense when I'm done, I guess. So anyway, or no, it won't make any sense, but you'll at least understand what I'm trying to say, I think. I heard these footsteps coming up the hill. Oh yeah, clearly she heard them too. She had the same reaction. And so then we moved to the center of the hill because we were spooked by that. Like, what's going on? Because it sounded like a human set of footsteps coming up the hill. So we're up in the middle of the hill and trying to make ourselves less nervous. And she says, oh, look, it's a Big Dipper up in the sky. And I said, well, actually, it's a Little Dipper because I'm taking an astronomy class this semester. And then we started talking about the price of textbooks. And then pretty soon we felt comfortable. We moved back to that other part of the hill and the noises were doing their thing. And then everything got silent. And then you could hear these sounds of footsteps coming up the hill. And at that point, I didn't remember that had just happened. That didn't occur to me. This was new, but felt weird. So we went to the center of the hill and she says, oh, look, it's the Big Dipper. I say Little Dipper, talking about textbooks. We felt better. Then went over to the other side of the hill. The frogs and the other wood noises stopped. Sound of footsteps coming up the hill. We moved to the center of the hill. And so in that case, it's a time loop, essentially, what we were going through. Or otherwise, we were being put in this sort of cycle of repeated activity and time was flowing normally. I don't know. So we're back at the center of the hill. Big Dipper, Little Dipper, and I'm like, wait a second here. Because that second time it happened, and I don't know, it might have happened more times, and I don't even remember. But at least I'm like, we've not only just had this conversation, we've had this conversation at least twice. And now I'm really freaking out. And then suddenly we're facing each other, she and I, and we're both paralyzed. And then three little guys come up and approach, not me, but they approach her. And they're looking her up and down, and they're like, no, not her. No, she's no good. She's not for him. I could hear their telepathic banter. And then she and I, my date and I were both frozen except for our eyes. And we're like, oh my gosh. And then they walk away after a moment, and then we can move again. We grab our stuff and run back to the car, and we drive off. And I'll tell the whole story because when she said, we didn't talk about it on the car ride home. We were absolutely silent, just completely quiet. And it was about at least a half an hour drive back to where we were from. And she says, and it's dark at this point. It's getting on late. And she says, I don't want to go home yet. Can we go somewhere else, do something else? So we went to a big box department store. We went to Meijer. And walked around up and down the aisles, just looking at random things like sponges and brooms and, bicycles, sort of all this stuff that was very grounding in a weird sort of way.
Yeah.
And then we sat, they had a pet department at the time, and the hamsters, they're up at late. And so we watched the hamsters for a little bit. And then she said, okay, I think I can go home now. So I drove her home, and then didn't talk at all the next day, neither of us. And then the day after that, she broke up with me. Didn't really go into any detail, but it was pretty clear.
There he is.
I knew he'd sneak in there.
Yep.
So Tim Shaw,
the legend himself.
So anyway, so she broke up with me at the time, just to finish the story. And while I didn't tell her that what had happened to us had anything to do with me, I'm sure she knew it had everything to do with me. So that was.
Why do you think that?
Anomaly.
Why do you think that? Yeah. Why? If I was on a date like that, I wouldn't necessarily think that it had to do with the person I was with, unless there was a reason before that. Why do you think that she would have thought that?
Well, I think, okay, for a couple reasons. One is that if I could hear the being's telepathic banter, then I have no reason to think that she couldn't either. And they were just making disparaging remarks about her. Like I said, they were saying, no, not her.
Right.
She's no good. She's not the one. And if you aren't embedded into this phenomena, like somebody who's grown up with it, how menacing must that be to be frozen out in an isolated place and these little gray things come out and say, you're no good. You're no good. You're no good. That's got to be terrifying. Like, what's the end of that story? Do they let us go or do they chop her up? I mean, in her mind, that's got to
right.
be
Oh, absolutely.
mind-blowing. And so when we got back, and I think the way that I handled the fear and the way that she handled it was different. So I think I may have given some tells, even though I didn't say anything because we didn't say anything. And then, 2 days after a traumatic experience like that with someone else, one possible response could have been that we bonded over this traumatic thing. But instead, she's like, nope. And so,
Right.
I mean, those were a few of the bigger tells that, she had to score.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. That's a pretty crazy experience.
Formulating the question, so go ahead and ask yours. Do you have any idea why you think you've been picked?
No, not really. Here's one thought. Okay, so one is that it's in my DNA. They're into my family for whatever reason, and so I fit whatever their criteria are to continue their grand experiment with me. And the other is I really think that the beings handpick a small population of experiencers, and they want to be in conversation. They want to be talked about, the beings. They don't want full disclosure. They want some sort of drip feed dissemination. And I think those certain experiencers feel the call, like I have felt the call to talk about what I'm talking about. And so I don't know that I can say that that's a reason that they picked me, but I think that those in my space who talk about this sort of thing, that's something that they appreciate. I don't think they want to be completely out of people's focus. And there are certainly a lot of media outlets that really garble the message and mess up actual events that happen. But I'm able to talk about what's happened to me as many other people in this community, and so to me that's a blessing when I hear somebody else talk about and they're sharing their experience, and I know that it's from the heart, and I know that I can trust them, and I think there's value in that, and I think there's value in it for them in that. I am not saying that I present the message well. I'm not saying that I'm fancy pants or anything like that.
I absolutely think you do.
But I'm just thinking that since I can talk about it, and I do, they appreciate those that do.
So, Bill, when you say it's in your DNA, and have you, like, I guess it'd be if you chase the angle, the familiar angle on where, when you say you're from here, you're here,
Mm-hmm.
Does it look like, okay, this particular part of my bloodline, this great grandparent on this side, or this parent, or this uncle, or whatever, but on this particular part of my family tree, that's where things look like they're coming from? Can you maybe trace those roots back, maybe see where there's connection there?
I've never done one of those in-depth DNA ancestry dives. But we'll probably come back with a star chart.
Okay.
No, but yeah, there's possibly something that could be said about that. though I don't know what it is. I haven't heard, for example, like a particular, like ethnic population being, like, oh my gosh, those Irish people, they're the, obviously the link to what's happening out in space or whatever. I haven't heard anything necessarily specifically that, I mean, you could do a great genealogy chart on someone, though I don't know what would be a tell within a study like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've been driving around lately and throwing other friends' podcasts and stuff like that. And, they talk about, hey, did somebody come down and alter our DNA code? And I'm like, just listening to you say you're having family experiences. I'm like, okay, are you, like you said, are you a long-term study? Is your family a long-term study or something like that? And have you looked at that thing? Boy, I really am off the general things where I'm usually the debunker on things, and I'm kind of like, and I'm not a conspiracy guy, but it's like, you've got family tree, DNA, and I'm like, boy, is that kind of, an interesting spin going that way.
Can I ask you a question, Mike?
Sure.
Are you familiar with any Bigfoot UFO stories?
I know there's quite a few, like Chestnut Ridge and those kind of things, but I'm on the Culls thing that how many Bigfoot UFO things, but how many cows and UFOs do you see? I mean, okay, well, there's how many mutilations, and we can take those animal mutilations at the same time, with the sightings, but I don't know. Yeah, I've heard some, but again,
I love it. You got to him, Bill. Good job.
No,
I love it.
I think I'm
this
hearing.
Is great.
This is something I had a talk with somebody this week. We hear stories.
Mm-hmm.
I can't reach in and pull my folder out and say, I talked to somebody that had an experience. This is where it's at. This is the date. This is the time. This is the location. I can say, yep, we were at a conference. I heard it's third person. To me, I don't put that as a documented sighting in my book because I don't have that data point. To me, that's like one of those urban legends that kind of gets popped around where you're going out, you're interviewing your witness, your experiencer, and they're saying, this happened, this date, this time. So yeah, if there's, you talk to Stan Gordon, or you talk to those guys that are down. You talk to your friends that are down in Pennsylvania. Yeah, I interviewed this witness. But again, that's coming third and fourth hand coming to you. So yeah, have I heard the stories? Yeah, but I've also heard, you look at like Skinwalker Ranch or some of these other places where you had those rash of cattle mutilations. Or even if you take the Hudson Valley in 76, at the same time, you've got the Whitehall experience with those guys up there. And you talk to Paul and how many documented cases that he's got with, well, there's a rash of UFO sightings in that same valley from New York City right up to the Canadian border. At the same time, you've got a rash of Bigfoot sightings. So yeah, are those correlations? And yeah, I've reached out to, my neighbor down the street, who's kind of on both sides and been doing this a lot longer than I have when it comes to the, looking at I never thought about getting the UFO thing till I started seeing all the, the change of the military stuff. The same thing with the Bigfoot stuff kind of came out of interviewing military and law enforcement guys and saying, hey, yeah, we were here and that's when we had our experience. So I guess, did I answer your question or did I spin
you better help him out there, Bill.
30 different?
I think, I don't want to put you in the spotlight on this.
Oh, it's fine.
Because I have friends that are big squatchers, and there are like folks within the community. I'm an outsider to the community, but I witness them debate whether Bigfoot is an animal or some sort of paranormal creature. And I hear your very measured answer in that you don't want to poke anybody's, I guess, sentiments about whether Bigfoot may or may not be a paranormal creature or an animal.
So here's my thoughts on the whole subject. And right now, I actually we're working a scientific study with hair and stuff like that's our pink Sasquatch hair experiment that we're working with Doug and I've got a couple of university folks working, where we're actually taking UV light and cell phone cameras and comparing hair samples so they can use them for DNA. We don't have a body. We can't tell where it's at. I've been in the Chestnut Ridge and I've seen light anomalies through the woods and was standing there with Altman and Culls and got video, but it was a cheap video camera, so it's the worst documented evidence that I could possibly share with anybody except listening to my voice go, what in the hockey sticks was that? And I'm trying to keep things PG tonight. I guess I know I've got trash mouth today.
Ticker.
Yeah, I do have my little, occasional, explicit language ticker here, but don't plan on using that if I don't have to tonight. That's for Kristie. Try not to use
Kristie's behaved herself tonight.
I've spent the last couple of months looking at more historical accounts. My background is law enforcement and archaeology, so looking at some of those cultural stories. In how this, and there's a lot of things with the Star people showing up at the same places, with the Bigfoot stories and, or in my particular area. Thanks, Kristie, for putting it there for Deb there.
I'm on it. Keep talking.
So, when we look at the cryptids in the area, like where I'm at here, there's in the history of the area, we've got a tall, hairy creature. We've got a flying head like creature. We got a big snake, but what do we have? Until we have an actual body on hand, or you can take prints as much as you want. That's the thing. And I'm going to take everybody's views till like I said, till we have a documented piece of full evidence. Yeah, we've got audio, we've got footprints, and then like I said, we're working on a hair project right now. That was Tim T. Reached out, and for those guys that have emailed me, come to find out, when I upgraded my phone, I'm not getting my Google notification. So I have a couple of emails I've got to follow up on this week. So, but yeah, we're doing a whole hair thing and working with some folks on a DNA study and looking at that kind of thing. So yeah, what we're going on, I'm out to prove one way or another if it is or isn't. But got some really good friends doing some really good scientific technology stuff, break it down. That's where we're at. So, but I have a pretty good friend that's a pretty good scientist, and he sometimes looks at the portal end of things, and it's like, okay, he's absolutely amazing, and sometimes he goes down that path more than I go down. It's here, because I'm still kind of like, hey, is it an original species? Is it a predecessor to us? Is it somebody that you hear it's a tribe that was here before us? So I'm kind of looking at that. There's the whole Pleiadian culture, the Mayan culture, what was there behind them. So who knows? Are we tied? And it just happens to be that's a gene that's still out there. It gets us a little hairier than others, So.
So we don't have a whole lot of time left, so I was curious.
Christina's got a question in there too in chat, I see.
Yeah. Oh, well, and we can do a quick recap because we did already kind of touch on that. But I was curious just to know a little bit more about your later years. We only have about 10 minutes left or so. So I want to make sure we at least get to touch on that a little bit. So, your teen years, your young adult years, your adult years, what's been going on with that?
Okay. So at about age 30, the phenomena let up for me in a big way. Now, at that time, I was well embedded within MUFON, and there are experiencer groups all over the place. And back in the day, I mean, it was really just, hey, this Sunday we're meeting over this person's house and we're doing a potluck, that sort of thing. And it was a close knit type of a group experience. So Michigan has had this one particular experiencer group that to my knowledge, has been going on probably right around since about 1990. And so with members coming in and out, and we all had a similar spike in activity at a particular time. And all of us, our activity dropped at the same amount of time. Now, coming into 2020, 2021, all of a sudden elevated activity again for all of us. I've been seeing a lot more unusual lights. Some of the things that have happened to me, I wish I could tell you some recent stuff, but it involves folks that I might not want to include. It's an easy thing to talk about. Oh yeah, this happened 20 years ago. I'm not in touch with those people. It was a long time ago. It doesn't affect current situations, but some things have. But I did have an encounter earlier this year, and so they are definitely still around. And I don't think that they're leaving anytime soon. I think something's got them stirred up. And I think that if there are any experiencers out there, you probably have had something similar happen, that an amped up level of activity recently. I can't account for why this would happen. It's easy to jump to conclusions and say, something apocalyptic is upon us, so they need to step in and save us or whatever, like that.
Right.
So I bumped the table. So it's an unknown, but it's a thing, and I can't account for it. And so yeah.
Why do you think things have slowed down for you, based on your own experiences and what they've actually done with you, and what you feel like they were doing with you, and why they were probably doing it with you? What do you think yourself personally?
And it's I know the answer I want to give, and it's a difficult answer to give, because so it goes something like this. During those, like, if you were to read my second book and see all the little nudges that they did to point my life in a particular direction. So my life starts heading in that direction and moving along smoothly. Now they expect more. They're like, okay, we did what we wanted to do with you then. We pointed you in the right direction. You've experienced life on this path for this long to get to this eventual point that we knew you would reach. And now something's going to happen. Somehow it's going to affect you profoundly. It's going to affect others profoundly that we also nudged in whatever particular path that they were on. It's time. And, I've heard messages similar to that over the years from many experiencers, like, oh, this is time. And then a decade goes by. And, I always keep an open mind, and now I'm getting this too. So for all I know, it's going to be just a false alarm that something big is happening. But yeah, I don't know. I think I have a lot to learn about what's happening right now. I think they're being very careful about how they're setting the table right now, and that I'll know soon probably what's happening. And it's complicated. It's difficult to even talk about. It would be more simple for me to say nothing's happened to me in the last 15, 20 years and leave it at that and say I don't know why. But I don't want to be dishonest. Something has happened to me. I just don't know the context into which to put it, and it involves discussing other people's accounts that I don't know that they're ready to discuss either. So yeah, I unfortunately have to. I'm not trying to be coy. I just sort of have to leave it at that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate honest. We always want the honest answers, and the genuine answers, the authentic answers. And I'm just going to put it out there that all night long, and I am home alone tonight. All night long, my whole house has felt very active to me. I'm constantly catching glimpses of things, almost like I was doing a reading show or something, or talking to someone about other spiritual stuff. And it's just very active for me tonight in that way. I just found that very interesting because with other guests and topics, it doesn't. It's not, this is a pretty well-controlled environment that I keep, especially working out of my house. So it's pretty interesting that it's been.
And we don't generally get
hopping
trolled
here tonight.
And
no, we don't get trolled either. No,
yeah,
maybe one, but not. What's that?
I don't know what you're seeing, and I probably don't want to, so that's okay.
No, it actually just popped up multiple locations, but they were all very similar, so it was weird for them to go to,
because we only maybe every 2 shows or 3 shows we'll get like one, not 4.
And we're we're coming to 8 different locations, so it's kind of weird. I'm like, what is going on here? Do you think maybe some of the increased is, that you're seeing is because now, we've switched from the Navy watching this, now the Pentagon's jumping on board and the report coming out, and maybe something's getting pushed, So
I got a chill right up my back when you said that. That was just like, goosebumps city here.
Yeah.
Well, if this addresses what you're saying, so I think there's sort of a big show, long game going on. I think that the government / military now focused on the term UAP to describe the phenomena of UFOs. And admittedly, UAP is technically a better term than UFO. But it's almost like they're rebranding the phenomena. Like if you're talking about UFOs, you're talking about those kooks out there on the internet. But UAP, this means we're now having an adult conversation. And this is, we're hitting the reset button and we're starting now. And along with that, when you talk about the videos from the Navy, it's what the government is doing is they're slowly trying to get ahead of disclosure. It's more and more apparent to more and more people every day that there's intelligent life out there and it's probably coming here. And so if the UFOs landed on the White House lawn tomorrow, the government would have its pants down. Everyone would be like, how come you didn't say anything about this? You must have known about this. And what could they say? But by first of all saying, oh, look, there's UFOs out over the ocean. It's not like UFOs over Chicago. It's UFOs out somewhere safe. Okay, so then maybe they'll have a coastal sighting this upcoming year, and then slowly acclimate people to the idea that there's unknown things in the sky. And with these government projects and departments talking about the phenomena and investigating the phenomena formally, they can do this slow release of information year after year. And after maybe about 10 years of doing that, and every year there's this token little set of UFO videos that are released, then when they're forced to give full disclosure about something anomalous happening, and people say, you've kept this a secret from us, they'd be like, no, we haven't. For the last 10 years, we've been sharing all this stuff with you. And I think it'll have enough of a softening impact that'll benefit them. I think they see the writing on the wall and know that they have to act now. And that's what we're seeing. It's no longer UFOs. It's UAPs are, it's a marketing campaign. They're controlling the conversation to the best of their ability as much as they can. And that's what they're doing. If full disclosure comes by this sort of goofy game that they're playing, cool. Whatever. Some people will need that hand-holding from the government to walk through these very difficult steps. And those of us that know better, because we've been, in this, up to our necks for all of our lives, and, it's, well, good. Everyone will some way, and within our lifetime, possibly, it'll be a reality to everybody, and, good.
Is this giving you some more, I don't want to call it validation, but those folks that may have given you a hard time earlier in life, now with this data coming out, listen to your story a little closer now?
Well, I have to say there is only one subcategory of people that have given me a hard time. Again, my family, my friends, my coworkers, for the most part, good. But I work at a college, and there are science faculty at this college, and they tend to be the trickiest people to discuss this topic with. I remember this one specific conversation I had with an instructor. I was talking to somebody about UFOs, go figure. And he comes in, he's like, "Oh, you're talking about UFOs again, huh?" And I said, which particular UFO case that you're aware of that you don't buy, that you don't like, or whatever? He's like, "I don't like any of them. I like none of them." And I'm like, "Well, just give me one." And he's like, "I can't name one." I'm like, "You can't name one because you don't know any?" And he goes, "I don't pay attention to that stuff." And I'm like, "So, okay. So you're dismissing the entire phenomena without looking into it first?" I said, "That's not very scientific."
Yeah,
And,
right.
oh, the daggers from
that was very clever. I like that. It's true, though.
Mhm.
No, I like that.
I
I'm
think
glad you called them out.
I think he'll have to be drag kicking and screaming into the disclosure once it occurs. And no, I don't like what this rigged campaign, public campaign to release the information the way it's happening, but they've been holding it back for so long that it doesn't take much for a certain subset of the population to freak out and do damage or make bad decisions when they're upset. So for some people, they'll need a security blanket, and I'll just ignore what's going on and keep doing what I'm doing in the meantime.
Wow.
You already got your reservations at the hotel, so you're you threw me off with the Bigfoot thing. So what's your favorite theory on that?
There's a library here in Michigan, the Caroline Kennedy Library, and a friend of mine, Rob, at the place, he will, for years, we've had this agreement that I will talk about whatever he wants me to talk about that is phenomenal related. And so, COVID has kind of broken that schedule up, I guess, a little bit. So one time he said, "Can you talk about UFOs and Bigfoot sightings together?" And I said, "I don't know if I can find much in that regard, but I know there is something there." So I think the first day I came up with 80, and by the second day it was like 200 some. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, there is not just a little bit of information on this. There is a heck of a lot of information." And it's not just Bigfoot and UFOs appearing in the same place, in the same sort of geographic region. It is sometimes Bigfoot and UFOs being seen like one day after another or within hours of each other, right down to like the stuff you'd hear from Stan Gordon, UFOs and Bigfoot together. And so it really opened my eyes. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, this is a thing to what extent?" Because clearly people see tons of UFOs with no Bigfoot around, see Bigfoot a lot with no UFOs around. But yeah, there seems to be a connection. In fact, there was a time, I'll finish up with my thought on it with this, is that during a MUFON state director call several years back, the international director for MUFON at the time says, "You guys got to stop looking into this Bigfoot stuff. If somebody reports a UFO, and Bigfoot, no, we give the Bigfoot stuff to the Bigfoot people. We just look at the UFO stuff." And then somebody says, "Well, what if somebody sees a Bigfoot, like within the same day as a UFO in the same area? Give it to the Bigfoot people," he said. And then somebody says, "Well, what about if somebody sees Bigfoot and UFO together?" And he's like, "Give it to the Bigfoot stuff." And then somebody says, "Well, what if you see Bigfoot coming out of a UFO?" It was a great call. And he said, "Give it to the Bigfoot people." And being a smart aleck, I jumped in and I said, "Wait a second. So it's okay to take a report of an extraterrestrial coming off of a flying saucer, but he better not have long hair."
Long-haired freaky people need not fly.
And
gosh.
and he said, "Ha or whatever." But yeah, I don't know. I really see that. Who knows? This is one of those fields that the more you learn, the less you know.
Mm-hmm.
But
yep.
it's a thing.
More questions than answers.
And that's why, my PC answer, because where we go down the path and what we see and what we hear, and that's just it. When you talk to Stan or Eric, and we saw this and that, and
Eric,
and I did an interview on a law enforcement show, and they're like, the Bigfoot, ha ha ha. But in 1976, while I was here, I'm like, okay, but I guess it's the same thing when I give the ghost folks the hard time, and I'm like, I'm out chasing furry creatures around the woods. But our experiences take us different ways and different paths, and I do appreciate you coming on tonight.
Yes, it's been a pleasure, and it's just been so informative and interesting, and so personal. So we're very grateful that you're willing to come on and answer all of our questions and really share your life.
So where can folks find you?
Okay, so I'm a fairly easy target. If you know how to spell Konkoleski, there's exactly 16 of us, and I pretty much am 99% of Konkoleski on the internet. So
nice.
But MUFON.com is MUFON's international website. If you see a UFO, go to MUFON.com to report it. If you want to investigate a UFO, go to MUFON.com and find out how to be a trained field investigator to look into the phenomena yourself. MUFON International is a subscription-based membership. MUFON, the state organization, Michigan MUFON, is donation only. So all you need is an email address, and we let you know when the meetings are, and you get a free copy of our newsletter that comes out every other month. We have meetings where we have special guest speakers. In January, on the 23rd, we have Tony Civilella giving a presentation on remote viewing. And the state membership for our state website is mimufon.org. MI for Michigan, and MUFON, so mimufon.org. Also, I have a personal website that I really should be a lot better at keeping up to date, and that's experiencer.me, as in me, experiencer.me.
Awesome.
Wow, that's great. Thank you, Deb. We love Deb.
Oh, yes.
Especially there.
And a plug, and every year in September, there is this phenomenal UFO conference at Houghton Lake. And Deb and RJ DeRoos, who are sometimes apparently watch the show. I
think it's our last two guests.
And Mike Smith and a large group of people that help out with that event as well. MUFON partners with them, and the event is just an incredible UFO live conference every year. And some of the best presenters on who are experiencers, and it's a very familial conference. It's like a very tight knit. Everybody gets to know everybody, and it's awesome. A lot of fun.
Oh, that's wonderful! Wow, we just appreciate so much your time. We would love to have you come back again.
Yeah.
Oh, sure. Yes, definitely.
Thank you so much.
Definitely a reason we're going back to Michigan too. So,
oh yes. So we will see you back in what is it?
August.
They do it in August.
Yeah. Took the time off.
So. Amazing. Well, thank you so much, and please keep us posted on all of your happenings and what's going on. And everybody out there, please make sure contact him if you have any questions. The books, read the books.
Yes.
Find him, follow him. Yeah. Very, very authentic, genuine. We love it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And Merry Christmas.
Yes, Merry Christmas. Happy holidays.
And thank you again for, unfortunately me not being available last week. So thank you for joining us. Such short notice again. So
bubble wrap.
If you want to hang out just a second in the back, and we'll close out. So, okay. Push the right buttons here. Okay, yeah. My screen's got all messed up tonight.
I know. Sorry. You're having a hard time tonight.
Yeah. So
sorry. But
we thank Bill.
Oh my gosh, what a cool guy. He's a cool guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Really, really love having him on. Oh my gosh. So what do we have going on next week?
We got a show Tuesday night.
It's duh. Duh. We have a show Tuesday night. So we have Ron Murphy. Would you like to
Yes.
talk a little bit about Ron Murphy very quickly?
Oh, yes. We're going to talk with Ron Murphy. He covers a whole bunch of different areas. He's got everything. We're going to talk fairies. We're going to talk Bigfoot. We're going to talk spirits. We're going to talk water creatures. Sorry, I'm taking care of another heckler there. Yeah, great.
This man has so many books that he's written on all these different topics. It's crazy.
Yep. And I've got a whole bunch of them in the other room. I got 2 more. Let's see. You got a live reading show on the 29th in Buffalo.
Oh, yes, live in Buffalo in person. So tickets are still on sale. So, do you have the flyer?
I don't have it there.
What?
Sorry.
What?
Yeah. I'm a little slow. Yeah, it's
all right.
I'll get it.
So
on there,
go to my Facebook page or our Facebook pages. You can also go to Paranormal Oddities. And that is actually where I will be doing the show. He has the venue inside the shop, which is absolutely amazing. It's a really cool space. So it is a live gallery show. Tickets are still on sale. Call the shop. And you can find all the information online on any one of our pages, our Facebook pages.
So yeah.
Where's
my sage? It's not working today.
It's all good.
So,
all right.
All right. Thanks, folks. And be safe.
And hold on. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays.
Thought you were doing that. So.
All right. No, stay safe. Stay healthy. Please be good to each other. And let's start this new year off the right way. And we will see you all next week. In the meantime, stay safe.
Head sample on.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.